Get the tractor beam out of commission, or this is going to be a real short trip. Okay, hit it!
Hey there, collectors. Welcome to Rogue 16 Creator Spotlight, a show where we get together with amazing creators.
Product Spotlight,
Star
Steve.
Wars. Excuse me. Product Spotlight. Wrong show. Let me rewind. Hey there, collectors. Welcome to Rogue 16 Product Spotlight, a show where we get together with amazing creators of Star Wars collectibles. Tonight, we are joined by Tom Spina, founder of Regal Robot and Tom Spina Designs, a company that creates truly spectacular Star Wars prop replicas. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How is everybody?
Fantastic.
Great.
Thanks for jumping on, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sorry for delaying the stream a few minutes with my tech nonsense here, but we got there.
Tom has a little bit of that Walmart internet that we have to deal with every now and then. So it's okay. We figured it out. You know what's a bummer, Tom, is that is it your basement where you were in?
Yeah, it's my display space. Yeah.
Oh, display space is fantastic. I wish they could have seen that. And
gosh, yeah, if only you guys could. It was so great, and I looked really handsome in there too. I mean, while we're at it, you know, but you guys missed it. So
the things behind you looked amazing as well. So
coming live from Tatooine.
Yeah. Such a bummer.
Oh, it's probably better this way. That way we don't get put to shame with somebody.
That's true. That's true. There's a lot of cool stuff.
Believe me, it would put everybody here to shame for sure.
I don't know.
So, all right. So this is a pretty big deal tonight, right? There's you made a major announcement today on your website, Tom. What's going on?
So yeah, well, today was the first look at something that we've been working on for a really long time, over a year now, actually, and we've teased it out a little here and there. We've gotten to talk about it at things like Comic-Con and Star Wars Celebration, you know, and that's where folks heard that we were working on this. But it really wasn't until today where, you know, people who went to our website, regalrobot.com, could click on the news, and in that blog, they can see their first look at our prop replica Rancor, which is something I'm just extremely excited about, which I kind of say all the time, but I mean, I really, really mean it this time.
Well, Tom, did this thing, so were you saying 2019?
Correct.
STCC, right?
So we were working on it for several months before that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was, I think one of the things people probably don't think about is just how long the development process is on a licensed product, especially when you're talking about a prop replica and something that, you know, has to be held to the ultimate standard when it comes to accuracy and faithfulness to those real props, and also to our own standard, which is pretty high. And so we had started the process, really, I want to say that we first started to just scratch the surface of it in February of 2019. By Comic-Con 2019, we were able to announce it. And that had meant that we had gotten through those first steps of the approvals we needed to get the okay to do the project, to get the okay on the basic concept, things like our overall, you know, the pose and look we were going for and things like that. And then, so we announced at Comic-Con and we showed just a few teaser digital images, just really, really raw, bare bones kind of stuff. And then again at Celebration, let's see, well, wait, was Celebration, that was 2019 as well. So that was before that. So yeah, probably was just Comic-Con then last year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been this thing that we've been working really, really hard on for so long in both, you know, digital space and in practical space and hands-on. And it's so cool to finally be able to share that with folks.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a handful of pictures on the site now. Next week when it goes live and when people can actually purchase it a few hours before the purchase link goes live, people will see the full gallery. It's probably about, I don't know, 15 or 16 images of it. And yeah, it's just really, really cool to be able to finally share that.
Yeah, Tom, do you know? So how long would you say in general? Because a lot of people don't know. Like, how long does it take to go from concept to a complete product? Like,
It depends a lot on the project, and
Yeah.
it depends. In our case, where we're such a small studio, it also just depends on our schedule at the time. Sometimes things go through really quickly. Some of the magnets that we're doing, where the concept comes up and you're doing, maybe it's a digital sculpture, and maybe because the way we do our magnets, they have that. It's that elements look that we call it, where it's various, whether it's bone or stone or metal or things like that. And a lot of them have these faux metal finishes, and they're designed to look artistic. They're designed to look a little like classical art and not necessarily tchotchke type stuff. And, that's something that we have a really good handle on, that style, and we have a really good handle on that paint, and we can move that, the sort of physical side of it moves really quickly. But then on the licensing side of it, you've got to get an approval for your concept. You've got to get an approval for your sculpt. You've got to get an approval for the paint. You've got to integrate any changes that maybe Lucasfilm or Disney wants. And then you've got to get approval on your
Tom,
images.
Are you sending these back? Are you sending this back to them every single time? Like, are you like, you know what I mean? Like, after you do the paint, do you send it? Like, do you send them images?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just sort of part and parcel with licensing, really, with almost any of the companies. But they're going to want to see what your sculpt looks like. They're going to want to see what the paint looks like. And, depending on who you're working with, they might have something to say about that on each step. And you'll integrate those changes, or sometimes you'll point out why maybe the choice you made is the right choice for the piece. And, we're really lucky with Lucasfilm. We have such a good team there that we work with, that if they're suggesting something, usually it's with really good reason,
right?
And if we can back up our choice, there's a lot of times where they'll say, "Oh, okay, that's a good call. I never noticed that," but usually they're pointing out stuff that sometimes we haven't even picked up on, and that's something, like, for us. Wow.
Well, they can just kind of walk into the archives and be like, "Let me check what is." I mean,
so it depends. If it's the newer stuff, they have better access, than anybody. If it's the old stuff, that's in a different location, and that's under George's purview now, and not Disney. So, it's it is, but they've, depending on who you're dealing with, they've been there, or maybe they know a piece because they've developed something else with it, and have studied it for that particular thing, or they've seen someone else's take on it where they've found something that maybe you didn't notice. I mean, every time you look at one of these pieces, I feel like, so it's like the first time you notice Darth Vader isn't all black, that Darth Vader is actually made up of alternating silver and black panels on his face. And they're actually, on the first movie, sloppily hand painted.
Yeah.
Once you see that, you can't unsee it. However, until you noticed it, he was always 100% glossy black and perfect,
black,
and you never knew. It's until, in my case, it was when Don Post put out their deluxe Darth Vader helmet in the mid-90s, where they actually flipped the paint job. It was the same scheme, but they literally left to right, like, did a horizontal flip on it. And I looked at it and I'm like, why'd they paint it like that?
Right.
And we're still watching the trilogy on a pan and scan VHS at this point, So yeah, of course we didn't notice it at that point. But then once I saw it, then, you would go back, and every image you looked at, you're like, oh my God, that's the way it's always been. So I really feel like that happens with almost every project. When you start diving into something, when you're trying to recreate something the way that we try to recreate stuff, you're gonna make new discoveries. You're gonna find stuff that that you never noticed before, and maybe no one's ever noticed before. And what's really cool is we always run into these moments where we're like, what do you think that is? Like, what's going on there? It looks this way in one pic, it looks this way in another pic, and then someone pokes you and goes like, Tom, why don't you ask Rick? Or Tom, call Phil. And you just kind of go like, oh, right, I know these people. I can talk to them. And then, like we're in this amazing, it's this amazing life where we've walked through and we've done all this restoration work and we've done production work and we've connected with all of these people who are our heroes. And through that, you can talk to them and you can find out stuff that that isn't going to be in some photo or isn't going to turn up in, maybe an interview from 1983, because nobody in 1983 was going to ask the questions we were.
Right.
And it's neat to be able to explore this stuff to that degree.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, I'm curious as to what was your inspiration to do the Rancor itself? Why? I'm sure walking through the Lucas archives, there's a million different things out there that you could go after, but you chose the Rancor. Why did you do that?
So it was so that someday a guy on a live stream could have the words "Future Rancor Keeper" next to his name.
That's right.
And as long as I've got that.
Everything's gonna be fine.
He's got the outfit as well, Tom. He's gonna wear the outfit.
I promised myself I wasn't gonna cry, guys. It's hard to choose what we're gonna do next. There is so much in the Star Wars world, and especially in areas we like to explore. Usually, you're like CZ3 or the Jabba the Hutt maquette, or even Phil's Tauntaun maquette. Stuff that is not just a statue of the creature, or the character. It's an artifact of the production. And so in this case, we actually had someone who was asking about it as a potential custom project. And my thought was, here's something that I had never seen done right before. Up until that point, there had been a handful of statues that some of the companies done, and Elusive Concepts years ago tried to make kind of a replica of it. But I feel like, kind of like with our Chewbacca's, kind of like with CZ3, can we find stuff that, if it has been done, hasn't been done to the way we would do it, and try to make something that we can do a really unique take on. And I felt like the Rancor was a great thing for that. We had done restoration for the Lucasfilm Archives years ago. It's actually not that many years ago, but in that process, we got to be hands-on and really, really, literally up close with a lot of pieces from my childhood, stuff that I would watch those old documentaries, from Star Wars to Jedi, or the classic creatures of Return of the Jedi and stuff like that, and marvel at how they pulled this stuff off.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if there's anything I am, it's a fan of the making of these movies. I love the films. The original trilogy gets me like, no other series does. But the making of the movies is endlessly fascinating.
Amazing, yeah.
And what's amazing is it just keeps on giving. I do these Cantina panels at Star Wars Celebration, and we explore the background of that scene. We explore the characters, the actors, the masks, the monsters, the set dressing, the things outside the bar. And every year I think, well, all right, this is the year we just repeat the one we did last year. And every year it winds up being a very new presentation because of all the stuff we've discovered. And it's amazing to me. We've done probably, oh gosh, I don't know, 8, 10 of those panels at this point between Star Wars Celebration and some of these other conventions. And every one of them, we wind up with multiple new discoveries, multiple new things we never thought we were going to find because we didn't even know we were looking for it.
Yeah.
And that's the way these movies are.
40
they
years
keep
later.
on giving.
Well, speaking of that.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason. Go.
I was going to say, speaking of that, we were just talking recently, Tom, how rewatching the movies, with the exception of a small few bits and pieces, they actually still stand up today, 43 years later. And taking into consideration, how far along visual effects have come, CGI, special effects, etc. All of this piggybacked off of, what Lucas originally started. But you watch these movies and you're not looking at a movie saying like, oh, that's silly, or it looks odd, or it looks weird. It really does stand up 40 years later. And that's, I think, the most fascinating part, going back to what you were saying, how the creation and the way they approached making this, because they went in, not really knowing. We didn't know Star Wars was going to be Star Wars. So that is really, really interesting.
Well, and you had just absolute genius level talent. You go and you look at Dennis Muren. I mean, it's like I literally just laughed saying his name because I have a hard time wrapping my head around everything that guy managed to pull off. And then, you just go right down the line, and that's literally just one, name up near the top. And it's just down the line, all of the talent that worked on these movies. I go back to the cantina scene because that's my ultimate favorite. But I look at, on Stuart Freeborn's side, you had Stuart and Kay Freeborn, absolute legends, and they were already at the time, but obviously Star Wars and ultimately Chewbacca and Yoda just cement that legacy. And Graham, his son, who was a big part of that team. You had Nick Maley, who would go on to do Krull and Life Force and a whole bunch of other films. You had Chris Tucker, not the actor, but he wound up. But he goes on to do the or had either just done The Elephant Man or would just go to do The Elephant Man shortly after. So, and Charlie Parker and a whole bunch of others on that side that were amazing. And then you come to Rick Baker's team, who did the reshoots for the Cantina. And now you have Rick Baker with Doug Beswick and John Berg, who are two of the most brilliant armature guys for stop motion and things like that. And also two of the nicest people on the planet. But then Phil Tippett, Lane Lisco's brilliant fabricator, Rob Bottin on there, who was absolute, makeup genius and really, Rick's protege at the time. And you just, like all of these pieces just were in the right places at the right time, at the time when the technology was on this amazing ramp up, and they were inventing the stuff that was going to make movies amazing for decades to come.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It is. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And
one of my favorites. Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, Jason. The tough part is if we don't actually show pictures soon, we'll literally be on here for like 3 hours. So and I know Tom doesn't have all the time in the world, so let's at least talk about some of the pictures and then we can see what happens.
Sure.
So let's bring up here. Let me see. Let me make sure I'm on the right picture here. Let's bring up. Let's bring up these pictures. So, so these are the ones that you have available to view as of now on your website.
Correct.
So, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
This thing really does look amazing.
And I will share that with the team.
It does. The paint master and everything. I mean, this is the master. This is the one. The paint master, right?
Right. But basically, so I did the finishing work on this paint master, but it was I worked on with Maria Turan at the shop, and she's the one who's going to be steering everybody through the paint on the rest of them. Awesome. And these are all getting made in the USA, and they're all going to be painted in our shop under my eye. And I'll be in there painting on them too. It's like when we do the
hand painted.
Yeah, they're all hand painted. It's not airbrushed, and the look of this is it's very intentionally done to look like the style of that original prop. So it's a lot of modeling, it's a lot of stippling, it's dry brushes and washes and things like that. It's hand paint, it's old school creature making, and it's what these guys do on a regular basis when they're not making Star Wars stuff for the other company. When we're doing stuff for Tom Spina Designs, we're restoring stuff from old movies. So they're constantly hands-on with this old prop material. They know this stuff inside and out, and it's all of us. We live and breathe this stuff. And so, when something comes in, it's the way we want to paint it, and so it's nice when it's like, oh wow, we can paint this old school. That's perfect.
Right. That's fantastic. And just chat, just so you know, like anybody on the chatosphere, whatever the hell you call it, if you have any questions, if you this is the time. We'll try to throw up some questions as we see them come up if we can, and this is the time to kind of go through all that. So
the first thing that hits me, Tom, when I look at this is it's just not one blanket color throughout. The subtlety between the colors, like in the folds of the skin, at the joints, at the elbows, the colors just it looks so lifelike. You know what I mean?
Thanks.
Really, you could for the however much a Rancor can look lifelike. This looks lifelike, right?
Well, you guys retained a lot of detail too. I mean, there's so much detail in this sculpt. It's crazy.
It's insane. It's so that a lot of the credit there goes to Gordon Tarpley. So we worked with a high resolution digital scan of the original prop. Now, the original prop had been it's foam latex. Foam latex is a material that turns to basically graham crackers over time. And the original prop is armatured and on display, and it's in the archives now. It's been restored, and it's resting back a little bit, and it's in a little bit of an awkward position, and its tail is bent backwards. However, the material is so fragile at this point that even during like a restoration process, you would not be able to put him back into the right pose, so to speak. And so, any work that has to be done on it has to be done in the pose he is. And so we scanned him in that pose, and then Gordon went in and digitally was able to fill in any holes. There's places a scanner won't see under armpits or under his feet or things like that. But he digitally reposed this, and we went back and forth together and picked what I think is just an amazing pose. And
it's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. So if you're looking here, it's the one hand reaching out. The head has a tilt to it, which is just, to me, like that's life in a piece like this. It's like you got to have that thing going. It's Luke is about to roll under the rocks and he's going to reach in and grab him, sort of thing.
Right.
So, and then he went through and basically digitally first unrestored the piece, taking away any of the changes that have been done over the years to take it from what the piece is in the archives now back to what it was in 1983, essentially. And, this is where all that restoration work comes in, because we're able to look at it and go, okay, I see what's happening here. This is foam latex that has dried out and has flattened out because it's dehydrated a little bit. So this is an area we have to puff up. This is an area that we leave. This is an area that, is crinkled because of the way it's posed. So when we repose it, we have to stretch that material back out.
Yeah.
And that was a really long, slow process. It's also a massive scan file. And I remember initially, the first few months of it was really, really slow. We would just go in every few days and work on it a bit and then back and forth. And then eventually it was like, I'm going to get a really much better computer because I literally can't move this file around. It's so many polygons.
Heavy. Yeah.
But so that process, that, creating this sculpt is really just, unveiling what was in that scan and then going through and making sure all the proper details were where they should be, and discovering stuff that we maybe saw in an old picture and didn't even know was on the prop anymore. And then when you go back to the scan, because, it had been repainted over the years or something, you would look and you go like, oh, like he's got these little cuts on him. There's like a handful of them. There's 3 on the side of his face, 1 in the back, 1 on the other side. And you can see him in the movie and you can see him in behind the scenes photos. But on the prop, we weren't spotting them right away. But going into the scan, it's almost like, a topographical map. When you take color out of the equation, all of a sudden certain things pop out, and we found those. And then it was just about going in and maybe sharpening a little here or making sure the shapes were right. Because over time, the latex droops a little and things like that. And so, I mean, when we talk about level of detail and sculpt. It really is. It's just hours and hours and hours of poring over it and making sure everything's in the right spot.
Well, and Tom, this brings me to, I think, probably the most contentious thing about this prop replica, which is the price. Everyone always has an issue with price. It's just the way life works. So what I would say is, and this is, I tell people this all the time, you don't know the story behind how much work it takes to do something, and how, I mean, this thing's hand painted. The whole everything you just said kind of brings me to the point of saying, that makes sense to me. And
we did not even get to the point where we then output this piece from digital to practical,
right?
And then have to go over all of those pieces by hand. And then that's where you catch other stuff that maybe you missed digitally. And I have my folks go in and hand sculpt little things to match and, make sure all the joins are hidden and everything works great.
Right.
Then you've got key areas, which some of that's done digitally, some of it's still practical for us.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, if I could count how many hours I spent hunting for the little plastic rings that we wound up having to make for his chain there, because we couldn't get washers that were the right size to the ones they had used, because that apparently doesn't exist anymore. We think they're washers.
Crazy.
They might have been just slices of plastic tubing. So, this is stuff you don't even think about. But sometimes you find yourself on a days-long quest to every small mom and pop hardware store looking for tubing that's the right inner diameter and outer diameter.
So Tom, let me ask you this. You mentioned a second ago joints. Okay. So this is a prop replica, right? So there are going to be certain things in it because of the way it was constructed, way it was intended to be a prop and whatnot. Are there, I noticed what appears to me to be seams on the knees. I'm not sure if that was from the prop
those seams are there. I don't think they're seams. I think they're just the nature of the wrinkles in those areas.
Okay.
If you look on his left wrist on the prop, we've kind of minimized this a little bit, but on his left wrist on the real prop, half the time there is a big gap, like a 1/4 inch gap where the hand has come loose from the arm. What we decided was the intent of the prop. The prop at inception when they started shooting, not after hours of shooting, was what we were going to go for. So we based our wrist on the best shots, not the worst shots, basically. But there are photos behind the scenes where you can see just a huge gap on the wrist. But so what we did, though, is left the heavy wrinkling there, which is on the prop, but, you sort of imply where that split was.
So what did you do in the cases where there were rods sticking into his body?
So it's a little tough to tell. We just basically closed up that area on the back. So there's also where Phil's arm went in the middle of the back. On the real prop, that's a big gap like this. There are pictures of him, I think in the Return of the Jedi documentary, there's shots of the back of the sculpt. And from that, we were able to basically come up with what that area needed to look like. And so we rebuilt the area where Phil's hand would have gone in, which is about mid-back, and turned it back into the armor plating that was there initially.
So it's not like under the tail where he's sticking his hand. It's like actually
no, it's up in the middle of the back, and he had a black sleeve over his arm.
Okay, yeah.
So it assumes to control both the head and the body, the movement of the.
Exactly. Yeah. It's basic puppeteering. I got my start with the Muppets, so I instantly go to puppet pose. But your arm is coming in the back.
That seam in the wrist. So things like that will be noticed once it gets released. These are things to be 100% faithful without covering it up to idealize the piece. So you're remaining 100% faithful to the prop.
We're doing the best we can on that. And sometimes, there's, and not very often, and not even with this piece, but, sometimes you have to figure out, you've got to make a choice. Not every reference photo agrees with itself. So sometimes you have to sit there and go, well, do we include this? Do we do A? Do we do B? And with this, it was one of those where it was like, well, there's shots where the wrist is nicely joined and there's shots where it's apart. What our initial attempt to do actually was we were going to make both hands magnetic so that you could take them off for shipping. And what we tried to do was make the seam where the magnet was the seam where the wrist had the seam. And I also just said the word seam like five times in the same sentence.
We heard it.
Do I win a prize for that, or is that
we heard
bad?
it though.
So it seemed to work. No. And honestly, I wasn't thrilled with how it looked though, because it did give the impression of a hard line there, but in resin and without that organic nature to it, it just didn't feel right to me. And I thought that people would get it and think that it was a mistake or think we had cheaped out or something like that. And on a piece like this, it's like, okay, maybe it does in this case make sense to pay tribute to the original version of this puppet right as they started shooting, rather than after halfway through the shooting and the hands falling off.
Right.
And we looked at the way the pose is, and if you go to the side view shot,
which right here.
So his left hand doesn't extend too much further from his head. His right hand does, but luckily he has that great wrist cuff. So the right hand is magnetic with super strong rare earth magnets. It comes off, and the cuff comes off with it as well. The cuff is a totally separate piece, just like the prop. And so that makes him a little more compact for shipping, but he's a big boy. So
he's two pieces? Two pieces?
So 4 pieces if you count the base. It's the base, the Rancor, and then the right hand and the wrist cuff.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
That's crazy. And that brings me to, so can we talk real quick about the base? So I actually love that you went with the base you went with, but it's also, I also wasn't expecting it. Like I think before we saw anything from this, I was thinking, like obviously I have Sideshow's Rancor in my head. And so I'm thinking, okay, we're going to get some sort of base with, whatever.
Yeah. Themes, rocks and dirt or whatever else.
Yeah. And then the more I look at this now, the more I'm like, oh, okay, I get what they're doing. They're doing a more of a museum type of piece. Yeah. And so that's interesting. Did you have any other thoughts on when you were making this that you wanted to, is this the whole way you wanted to go?
Immediately, this was the way I wanted to go. I think that, what we're doing is a replica of an artifact of this production. And to me, that's the prop itself. And I think anything that distracts from that, can be weird. Now, we could have, the license-wise, we could have done a theme base for it. There's also a question of cost. I knew we were going to be pushing to the top edges of where we wanted the piece to be to begin with. There were, an exorbitant amount of lead-up investment and time in terms of getting this thing done. And then you've got your output, you've got all the work that goes into mastering, you've got the molds, all of this stuff that, and then never even mind all the licensing side of things and those costs. But, all of that stuff adds up so quickly. So it's just like, do we add something that made in the USA and hand painted, as anything we do would be, even a base, might add hundreds of dollars of cost. Maybe not. Right. But, ultimately, this is an artifact. And to me, don't distract from that. Don't take away from that. Present it, pedestal it. This is meant to be a prop replica. And to me, I think I'm a screen use prop collector. Ultimately, I've got a ton of replica stuff that I've made over the years and lots of Cantina monster masks and things like that. But when I collect a screen use piece, my thought is always about how do I not distract from this actual piece? And sometimes you've got to put a replica element into something just for the sake of display. Sometimes it's, I'm trying to think of examples, but sometimes, I've got like one of the Tick costumes Patrick Warburton wore. Underneath the mask, I've got a life cast of Patrick Warburton that came from the production. But it's all one color. And it's very simple and it's minimal and it doesn't distract. It's the right feature, it's the right form, but it's not the detail. It doesn't draw your eye. If I had put, we could make a realistic, hyper realistic silicone Patrick Warburton head with hand punched eyebrows and stubble and whatever the heck we wanted. But as soon as someone looked at that, they would immediately look at the eyeballs and go, oh, he looks like he's going to blink. And We get that all the time,
Yeah.
but I like when I can come up with a display that visually completes something but doesn't distract.
Well, and they're also looking at the wrong thing at that point too. The costume is what you want them to look at, right? So,
and
that's what I love about this. That's what I love
you,
about this, because it draws your eye to what needs to be seen, right?
It disappears. It gets out of the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I love it.
I like the idea that it looks like it came right from the archives, because a lot of the pieces that are displayed in the archives almost have a continuity. A lot of the helmets have those flat gray bases. A lot of the heart publickers are on the black bases. So it also takes that element of the museum pose and also that archive overall style and look. So it is a great presentation.
For folks that can't get there, like, I want to give them something that feels like that. I want them to feel like that thing in their house could be that, if they squint just right, or look at it out of the corner there. Sometimes you get something new in your collection and you got to you look at it, you got to walk out of the room and come back in the room and look at it again. I want them to do that with this.
It's the Chewbacca bust that I have behind me. I walk in and out and I go, I can't believe this thing. I just cannot believe it. Yeah, it's crazy.
Hey, Matt, can you go back to the side view, the side view picture? So one of the most interesting details, aside from the drool, which we'll hopefully get to, but one of the most interesting details of this to me is the tail. Clearly something different is going on in the tail there. It's a lighter color. It doesn't look like flesh. It looks almost like bone. Tom, tell us what's going on with the tail piece, because I don't remember really seeing that before.
So I didn't remember seeing that either. This is the Darth Vader's silver and gray, silver and black thing for the Rancor. So actually, you know what, Matt, are you the one controlling the images?
Yes, I am. Yep.
So go ahead a couple images to Phil working the puppet.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, that right there. Look at his tail. Yeah. It's a bone color tail. Go down.
This one.
Let's see.
Has
if
it
you
really
look
light
here while he's painting, it's a bone color tail and bone color armor at the bottom, although they're still in the works.
Yeah.
This is the shot I was looking at where I first noticed it. And I said, wait a minute, that's a basically fully painted puppet at this point. That's Phil doing the effects guy thing where they grab a cup and a dry paintbrush and stand like this to it so the guy who is coming through with the behind the scenes camera can take a photo.
Right.
Why is that bone color? And we went back and forth on this for a couple of days, and someone said, why don't you email Phil? It's like, oh, right. I'm an idiot. And what he had said was the idea was to make it chitinous, to make it sort of like, lobster shell or some sort of insect shell sort of thing. And looking at the film and looking at all the behind the scenes photos. So my thought was, oh, well, they must have painted it after this. And when you look at the behind the scenes photos, you start to notice, you know what? They didn't. They left it that bone color. And now they left it nearly unpainted bone.
Right.
Right.
This is one of those things where you have to make it where ultimately this is going to be on display in somebody's house. And to leave it totally unfinished would look really weird. And in the archives right now, it's solid brown. So it had been repainted at some point.
Right.
But what our thought was, well, if the intent is this chitinous material, if the intent is this sort of bone armor, well, let's make it the bone color and let's transition from the back, which in the film is slightly lighter than the rest of him and is very stained and distressed. Let's transition from that color to the lighter color on the tail, and let's add distressing to it so that it just feels like natural bone.
Right.
And the distressing layers are done with the same dark tone that distressed a lot of the skin and gives you that cohesion that you need on something like
that. And
that.
Tom, I'm sure you're gonna have more photos of the back, right? When you put it out. Okay, so they'll have a better idea of what's going on.
And if you look at that tail, Tom, I know you've looked at it a million times, but as I'm looking at it, it almost, to me, it looks like, well, it's plates, but it looks like overlapping fingernails almost to me with the lengthwise,
like an armadillo.
Right? Yeah, or just all the ridges that are in them that are that are vertical and whatnot. I just love how much more detail it adds with the kind of the exposed bone versus flesh.
And what we did was we actually used the same paint treatment that we used on the teeth and nails. And that's another way to tie it into the piece, but it gives it that, I mean, like you said, it feels like nails. It feels like, you know, you know, the fingernails on him are pretty bone-like to begin with, but it's an off yellowy white with layers of this dark brown. You know, Phil likes to put raw umber washes on everything. I was, you know, you talk to anybody that's worked for him, and it's always, you know, needs more umber. And so, you know, that's the thought when you go to this. It's like you look at it, and you know, you start with this kind of, you know, warm tone on him, and then it's just like, well, umber him up, and you know, you just keep going until it's enough. We had done, so did you guys see the Rancor that we did for Magic Wheelchair a few years ago?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a giant that wrapped around the kid. It would, you know.
Yeah, so it was, and I don't know if Matt, if you want to go to the Tom Spina site, are you able to add images live?
Yeah. I can find something. Sure.
So go to the TomSpinaDesigns.com page and just search Rancor. You should be able to find it pretty quick. There's a page of the gallery of pictures from Magic Wheelchair. But so basically, we had done for a really great kiddo named Liam, who was a little guy, small wheelchair, and he was one of 6 or 7 kids. I think it was 7 kids that were getting Star Wars themed chair costumes for San Diego Comic-Con a few years back. And one of just the most amazing things we've ever gotten to do. There's 7 different shops. Adam Savage was involved, Fawn Davis's shop, the Winston Studios folks. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
So,
Tom, is this the one that was just going around the other day for the wheelchair? Because I passed the links around for people to check out the images.
Yeah. So,
donate. Okay, so this is part of that.
James Powell had done that. And so, so this was us. So there's Maria. So, you know, the same person painting these little ones has painted one of the big ones.
That's awesome.
You know, what we did was we carved this all out of rigid foam. That's Melissa, Maria on the left, me in the middle there. We carved this, and I think that's Judge Dredd in the box behind us. We carved this all out of rigid styrofoam. It was carved by Richard Riley and Patrick Louie and me and Lonnie Hale and some other guys. And we rigged up a way to attach it to the back. There's Pat working on the bracelet. We actually put on the inside of the bracelet, I don't even know if there's a picture of it, but we put one of those bone collar tags like you'd get for a cat or a dog. And crazy. It just said, like, if found, return to Malakili. But
dang, look at that thing. That's crazy.
So this was built full scale and was made to mount behind his wheelchair, and the dad actually hid and saw out of the mouth, and then the hand wrapped around the chair, and it was just super fun, you know. And it was a great first study for us. You know, before we had even thought about doing the replica, this was, you know, a ton of research went into this, and there was stuff that we picked out on that. I mean, even just the steel eyeballs is something that there you go.
There it is, yeah.
You know, and we couldn't help but distress it. But, you know, even the steel eyeballs on this, so that's something we did on the replica that is on the real props. Phil and a lot of stop motion guys, when they do a creature, they put ball bearings in the eyes because of the way they catch light. And what they'll do is they'll put a Sharpie marker on them, and just to give them a wash of black. And so on our replica, the eyes are silver with a wash of black and a high gloss. So it gives you that steel look. And that's the sort of stuff that, you know, you don't get with a character piece, you get with a replica piece. And that's the sort of stuff that we see on those real props in the archives. And that's what we want to bring to life with this thing. There's Liam and his Luke Jedi outfit that they made him.
Fantastic.
Really great kid, great family. Yeah. So they made a life-size droideka. They made a Porg Island. That X-Wing was insane. It was 10 feet wide. It was absolutely nuts.
That is a blast, huh? Look at that.
It was amazing. It was unreal. And we did this parade from the convention hall all the way back to the hotel with, you know, these 7 kids. Each wheelchair was more ridiculous than the next.
That's
than the last. It was insane. It was
the Rancor one's almost scary. When you're a child looking at having it over your head.
So it was so funny when I was talking to the kids' parents before we did this, and I said, you know, they said that we can do whatever we want. I said, but I want to do whatever Liam wants. So, I was on the phone with his mom, and I just said, Lise, what is he into? What is he like? We like the creature stuff here. I'd love to do some kind of creature based thing. I think it'd be a lot of fun and different from like all the vehicle stuff that they usually do on this. And I said, what's his favorite creature? And in the background, I just heard the dad going, Rancor, Rancor. and I had to take the mom aside and go like, all right, is he just saying that because it's his favorite or is it his favorite?
Dude, that's funny.
And so it was down to Rancor or Wampa, and we went Rancor, and I was so glad.
So this is what you're talking about, the steel eyes here? Like
yes.
the kind of black? Yeah.
Oh, what a fantastic little detail. Yeah.
Thanks.
So cool.
So speaking of little details, Matt, can you go back to that side profile, that last one again? So first of all, I noticed a scar right up at the top, the third.
Yeah, flush wound.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's what I was. Yeah.
But even more interesting is around that scar and really across the whole back are so many bumps.
Let's see if I can move it.
Use your scroll wheel. Use your you just scroll.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. There's all these now. This is something that you don't notice on other things, and I certainly haven't noticed it on other companies' versions of the Rancor. Is all these bumps and horns and just all these protrusions coming out of the back. Wow, I mean. That's the sort of detail you get only by looking at them.
So long, figuring all those out and cleaning up every little one of those. So those are, we call them cake frosting because what they basically, it looks like they took either silicone or latex in a pipette bag and just went and just did the little bink 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 because they're little pointy kind of things. And he's covered in them. And there's other stuff that Phil's done. Yam Nose for the cantina is covered in almost the same kind of stuff. There's when they redid Snaggletooth for the holiday special, they added a whole bunch of bumps to him, and it's just a great way for them to how do we make this creature gross? But he's covered in that stuff. The metal earring, so the earring is it's custom made for this. We're making each by hand. We basically make we made a rig to make a metal ring that's the right size. Then we snip the rings off, and then each one gets wire wrapped. One of the interesting things is the earring on the prop in the archives is not the original earring. So we initially set out to replicate what we saw in the archives, but then going back to the reference photos, we realized, that must have changed at some point. So then we retracked and came up with the proper earring. And of course the drool.
Yeah, what's the deal with the drool? What's that made out of?
So what I noticed in the film was it looks like they used monofilament fishing line and then probably Methicil or one of these gooey, like slime from Ghostbusters type things, but clear. And they probably loaded up his mouth with that, and so he'd be drooling. But they gave it a path by putting some fishing line. So it's a similar approach, very much what they did, except it's silicone. And we have a little way that we're doing each, but it's kind of a natural drip for each. Each one will be a little unique.
That's so cool.
I can't help but to get more and more excited every more detail.
It's so good, and the mouth is all like wet and like it just looks like.
Yeah, I don't know if you can catch it, but there should be light reflecting off the nostrils too, because he's got snot in the movie, so we made sure to gloss the inside of the nostrils and have a little dripping out each. The bottom edge.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you can catch a little bit of a kick of light off of one of them there.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah,
so
a little bit of it. That's crazy.
That's a natural OCD that comes up.
Yes.
That's an OCD where you're losing sleep over the nostrils. We got to get the nostrils.
Dude, you're not even, you're not far off. Like there are, with all the stuff we do. So, aside from even just the Regal stuff, but the waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat and going like, we'll make it out of urethane, like that kind of thing all the time. Or like you lay down, you're like, oh God, I'm so exhausted. It's 4 a.m. Let me go to sleep. And then it's just like, bink, how am I going to make this? What am I going to do about that? I got to figure out how do I get the teeth to fit in this thing? Like that's the life that we've chosen.
Fantastic. I love that the teeth are just totally screwed. Like just all kinds of crazy going on with the teeth.
No orthodontist in
it's
where
so good.
Rancors live. Yeah, no,
It's so
absolutely.
So Tom, I think you announced an edition size of 83 on this one. Is that right?
That's correct, for no reason at all. We just thought it was a good number.
Now, Tom, just to clarify, so it's going to be, so it's a signature edition, 83, but that's it. 83 is the finalized. It's not going to be a carryover of non-signature.
Correct.
Okay.
If we ever do, so similar to the Chewbacca that we did, if we, so a lot of people ask about that first Chewbacca bust that we did that was going to be the Peter Mayhew tribute, signature edition, wound up being the Peter Mayhew tribute edition with Mark Hamill doing the signing. That edition, once closed, those 50 pieces were gone. We're not remaking that exact bust. People are like, oh, we'll just put that bust out again, but without the signature. That's not something that, Lucasfilm is keen to have us do. It's not something we're keen to do. We want to preserve the value and the specialness of that initial run. So, anytime we've done custom edition Chewies after that, they've always been significantly different from that first run. You're not going to see a Chewie out there that is the same exact out of that mold, but we just left off the plaque. So that's why when we did that custom edition Chewie, which a few of you guys brought home, actually all three of you guys brought home.
All of us,
guilty.
You could see how drastically different that is. Right. It's the same same lineage for the face on it, but the neck is different. It's got the shoulders, it's got the chest, it's much bigger, it's got the posable neck and all of that stuff. So it really became a really unique edition. And it was neat. I was glad we were able to put that out there, because we've had a lot of people who were, maybe upset they weren't able to get that first one. And even though this is more of an investment, it's a really cool piece. I think the step up is well worth that change in cost. And, I think right now they're working on another batch of 7 of them.
Oh, great.
So, there have been a decent number of takers, and it's the sort of thing where we make them to order. So, you're not getting something that comes off an assembly line. Even these Rancors, you're talking 83 pieces made in the USA. They're going to be done the same way we would do one of them. We're not going to sit down and have these come out of some machine. There's not stamps painting them or anything like that. They're not being made in some nameless, faceless place overseas or something like that. Like, these are made, like I rattled off the names of the people that'll be making these.
Right.
When the time comes, people want to know who painted theirs. I could probably tell them.
Well, I'm sure you'll be able to tell Steve, because he'll probably get number 1. I mean, we can't. Who knows? But that guy, he's a quick one.
I'm a little bit competitive, Tom.
Yeah. Well, it's one. I think that the keeping these edition sizes small and keeping the edition special is important. If we ever do another edition of the Rancor, 1, it's not going to be anytime soon, and 2, it would be altered dramatically from what you've got. It would either be some other pose, maybe the mouth is closed, something that is really big difference. Maybe it's
Greg
it would
asking,
have to be.
Would you do it at like a smaller scale, possibly, or anything like that? Would you go small forever, or do you always usually go bigger than what you have?
So license-wise, we can do something smaller.
Okay.
So it's possible.
Yeah.
Funny enough, so this is other steps in the process, and again, all this kind of goes into the cost on these things. So early on in the process, we took the reposed scan, and I think Jason got to see this at the shop. This was up on a high shelf, if you remember. But we took a reposed scan of the prop and printed it pretty much as is. And this was our way to look at that scan and say, in real life, because turning something around in a computer is one thing, but having it in your hands is something else. So at an expense and at time, we printed this thing full scale, and we got a sense of like, okay, this is how it feels. This is how big it is. This is as far as we want that hand reaching out before it starts to feel off balance. And what was really neat was the pose we came up with when we took it off there, even without attaching it to a base or anything, it stood on its own perfectly and was balanced.
Wow.
Oh, crazy.
It was that never happens, you know. So we took that and made our decisions of where we had to tweak and what needed to be fixed and what didn't. And it was an amazing tool to figure out what we were going to do with this. And then before we went with the final high resolution output, I did a roughly 55% scale print.
Okay.
And it was basically as broken down the same way we intended to break down the big one, even though it didn't need to break down that way for the small one. Like, you know, machine wise, we could have printed bigger parts. And it was a way for us to check all the keys, check all the seams, to make sure that any of the, you know, there were no conflicts. Sometimes you get things where digitally it's a conflict, but you don't realize it until you get into practical.
Right.
Pardon me. And also just to double check that the level of detail was right. Sometimes you've got to go in on a scan and say, you know, even though the detail is here, it needs to be punched up a little bit because it's going to go through printing, molding, casting, and you might lose a little bit. So sometimes you've got to refine some stuff. Yeah. And so we printed this one about, I don't know, 10 inches tall, 11 inches tall. And it came out really neat. And it was something like we looked at it and we said, like, I could almost see doing that someday.
Sure.
But I think it's something I'd have to really look at. I don't see doing a small scale one anytime soon. The other thing is the savings might not be as big as anybody, as someone might think, because you still, you know, even though it's smaller scale, your savings is in material more than anything.
Yeah.
And time is where your cost is on anything like this.
Right.
So you're still putting in time, you know, printing, cleanup, molds, you know, and then casting, cleanup, assembly, paint, all of that stuff is, you know, yeah. Is it going to be less material than a big one? Absolutely. Is it going to be some amount less time than the big one takes to paint? Sure, but just in like literally house paint kind of rules,
right?
You know?
Right.
Yeah, still very labor intensive.
Big wall than a small wall, but painting 2 eyes and a nostril and every tooth, still takes about the same amount of time when it's a big head or a small one.
Well, and I think what people going into this, like looking at this specific piece, are thinking about is really lineage, right? Like that is a big
absolutely
part of this decision, is saying, this thing is exactly the same as the puppet, essentially the size, everything.
The closest you're going to get to having that puppet. Yeah,
exactly. And that's a huge part of it.
I mean, I'm not, you know.
yeah, no, for sure. Can you give us a size? Do you know the size, the measurements of this guy?
I'd want to say it's 18 and a half or 18 and 3/4 inches tall.
Okay.
And then the base is about 1.5 inches.
Okay.
It might be 18 and 1/4 and the base is 1.5 inches.
Okay.
But it's in that range, just a little over 18 inches. And it's funny, for years I had heard Mark Hamill, you know, say it was reduced to an 18-inch puppet or something like that in one of the behind the scenes things. And I always assumed he was just guessing, but they were pretty close.
Yeah, that's crazy. And do you know
that's taken into?
Do you know the depth of it by any chance? Because I know the hand's reaching out quite a ways, right? So
you know what? Hold on, you guys. You're only seeing my thing, not my screen.
Yep, we're not seeing your screen. We're not seeing.
He's like, we're definitely not seeing your screen. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that's your bank account balance. Interesting.
That's right.
I love it.
But even with the height, while pulling up the depth, so that's also taken into consideration that he is in a crouched pose. His knees are bent, his head is hunched over. So it still gives that presence that if he was fully standing, you would have another.
We've done a bunch of werewolves, and it's funny. They always feel much bigger. You know, sometimes somebody will say, it's like, oh, you know, how big is that werewolf? It's like, he's about 6.5 feet. I'm like, oh, I thought he'd be much bigger. I'm like, well, he's in a crouched pose with a dog leg and he's hunched forward. It's like, if he stood up, he'd be 7.5 feet tall. Yeah. So he's massive. And when you see him at 6 or 6.5 feet in person, you go, oh, geez, that thing's huge.
Yeah.
But so you still see it as a number, it doesn't sound like much.
Yeah. See, this is something we're not used to hearing. We've done a lot of werewolves. So this is good.
Exactly.
We're learning a lot here.
So according to this, and this may need some double checking, but these are my notes. I've got him at a 2-inch tall base with a full height of 20.75 inches. So that makes him 18.75 plus a 2-inch base.
Got it. Yep.
And the width is at 17 inches and the depth at 21.5 inches.
That's
Wow.
fantastic.
Approximate weight is about 16 and a half pounds with the base.
That's
So he's
awesome.
quite a large piece. He's imposing.
Yeah, he's a big boy, but and that is intentionally keeping him a little compact. But I
Right.
think there's something about him. You know, what did Phil call him? A gorilla crossed with a potato. You know, it's there. You need a coiled spring feel to this thing. You know, you need this vibe of like it's about to go,
Right.
not it's reaching way out or he's doing some kind of crazy leg thing. Like to me, a piece like this is about the potential energy, not necessarily kinetic energy.
That was always in the movie. The amazing thing about the Rancor is that it was so slow, but still so menacing and so scary.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Like it wasn't moving very fast, but you're still like, this
Right.
thing's freaky. It's like crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
So
No, it's a terrifying design. You know,
it really is.
It is a really unique creature. Like I mean, just those teeth. They're like a crocodile or something, where it's just it's out on the outside of the lip. It's not even inside the like. You can't even keep your teeth in your mouth. What are you gonna do? Like they're just splayed open and just like clearly made to just grab stuff and hold it. And it's just
so
fantastic.
So we're at the hour mark now. When we could probably go on for another hour, but we probably need to start wrapping it up. So I just want to shift gears just a little bit, Tom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Link asks the question, hey Tom, longtime Rebel Force Radio listener here, will there be more Mandalorian announcements this year? And so I'm going to generalize that question.
Okay,
Tom, you've got an audience here who just saw an amazing creature, but everybody's thinking about the next best thing.
Right.
Any hints? Any hints that you want to make? Potentially a Mandalorian or something else that's coming up
this time? No, nothing's behind me. So I think we have. So just today, we actually did a surprise release of these wood plaques that we've started. These wood art plaques, and it's where we're taking something that we're allowed to do because of our decor license, and other license companies have done. You'd find posters and things like that on a wood plaque, and using it to dig up obscure behind the scenes and cool stuff. So the first two we released are a tribute to the 40th Empire. They are the Darth Vader in Flames patch that all the crew members wore, the awesome Macquarie artwork. And then the Wampa warning sign from the cutscene where 3PO pulls the warning sign off the door, and the Wampa does, that absolutely brilliant comedic timing of like, open the door, Wampa gets the guy, oops, close the door, and like that guy just didn't even care about it, but it was like not even a thought. It was just like, door closed, okay, next going, come on.
Yeah.
So that's something that just came out today.
Right.
That's a new line. I would say you could definitely expect to see some more stuff from that line after Mando starts airing. I think if you're a fan of, say, the bone mini skull that we do, the Mandalorian skull, that's the bone style one, the mythosaur that we've done all different variations on. If you like that, and maybe thinking like maybe there's something else you could add to that collection, keep an eye out. I would say in the next few weeks. If you like our magnets, on the day we release the Rancor, there's going to be a release of a magnet.
Cool.
And
very nice.
We've already teased what it's going to be, so I don't. It's actually a Rancor magnet. So for anybody who can't afford the $29.99 Rancor prop replica, you can afford the $29.99 magnet Rancor, and at least get something. And it is from the same scan. We closed the mouth for the magnet one. And it's roughly, I mean, the scale is not a specific thing on the magnets, but it's roughly like half scale.
That's a fun little
It's
fact.
a cool bronze finish. It looks really neat. So that's coming out. There's also another magnet that'll come out in early November, and a magnet 2-pack that comes out for, I believe it's scheduled for Black Friday.
Oh, cool.
And these are all part of that B series. And then this is why I don't sleep. We do have another maquette that is due out probably the end of October. When it comes to this stuff, there's a lot of hoops to jump through with licensing and all of that stuff. So we're just waiting for the final sign-offs to be able to finalize the date on that and to get everything else, all the ducks lined up for that. But that should be coming out, like I said, probably right around the time that Mando comes out. Hopefully that week before, when they're doing their whole Mando Mondays thing, which they've announced. But yeah, there's a lot coming, and there's so much more beyond that. So if you're not already following us, head over to either Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or wherever you follow folks, and follow at Regal Robot. Also follow at Tom Spina Designs while you're at it, because there's always cool stuff going up over there from different movies and a lot of fun Star Wars content from the official jobs we get to work on.
And Tom, for the guys that aren't heavily users of social media, you have an email list for updated
Yeah.
product?
So if you go to either site, go to either TomSpinaDesigns.com or go to RegalRobot.com, depending on your poison. And right on the homepage for each, just scroll to the bottom. There should be an option to sign up for the mailing list. I know on Regal, it's right on that homepage. Cool. And we send out an email blast anytime something new comes out. So everybody on our email blast today got to see the first look at the Rancor right away, and the new Wampa Warning and Darth Vader in Flames plaques. So
I did get the ESB one. I'm excited about that.
Oh,
I
nice.
picked up the Vader in Flames as well.
Yeah, it's freaking
nice.
Cool.
We were having a contest to see which would sell better, because Rob did the art. Rob at the studio did the art for the Wampa Warning sign, and Chris Trevis, who's a friend of mine, Star Wars artist, did the art for the Vader in Flames. So it was just kind of like this gentle ribbon going back and forth. Like
Vader
Vader
in Flames all day
it
long.
ended. It was a tie when we left the shop. I don't know where it is now, but it literally was. It was neck and neck that Rob would be winning, and then Chris.
Tom, so the Rancor comes out October 5th?
5th, Monday.
5th? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Monday, October 5th.
So one week from today.
October 5th, 83 edition size.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you'll see a bunch of new pictures and all that kind of stuff.
Correct. So what we'll do is we'll send out an email probably around 9 a.m. that morning.
Yeah.
And that'll have a link to the product page.
Okay.
And the product page will be live with the gallery, but you won't be able to purchase until noon Eastern.
Okay.
So noon Eastern comes, we manually throw a switch. Everybody buys all at the same time. And then we go through the emails and basically down to the second figure out who gets what edition number, basically.
Okay.
And it's
also just to clarify for some of the watchers. So with the price tag, they do have the option of paying via payment plan, either 3 or 6, I believe.
So in this one, so normally it's a three payment plan. Usually the products on our site, things like it's usually the high end stuff, either things like the Han Carbonite desk or the Emperor thrones that we do and stuff like that. So stuff like that, usually 3 payments. For the Rancor, what we've done is made it a 6 payment plan. So basically it's $500 a month. You put down $500, and then it's $500 a month after that, and that actually lines it up very nicely with when we expect the edition to be done and start to ship. So
that's cool.
So folks can take advantage of that. The details of it are on the site. If you're look at any of the collectible type items, go to the statues and bust page and look at like either CZ3 or the Jabba the Hutt maquette or something like that. Any of those should have a payment plan on it, and you can click a little link there. It'll take you to a page that explains the whole plan.
So hopefully the last thing before we wrap it up, I just want to remind everybody that we have a good buddy, PJ. He's got a show a channel called The Paradox Nerd. He does the absolute best reviews on YouTube, hands down. Yes, everybody should check that out if they don't know it. But he's been telling everybody that he's got you coming up on his show. I believe it's Thursday night. And,
I believe so.
Yeah. So
this was a good test for that. To make sure I can get this figured out.
Yeah.
All right.
So PJ is going to be diving into the Rancor as well as a whole bunch of other things as well. So
I'm sure he's got a lot to ask.
And Tom, you also have your own stream on Wednesday, right? You're doing something on.
Yes, I believe so. So, if I'm not mistaken, 3 p.m. Wednesday, probably on the Regal Robot Facebook page.
Eastern.
Eastern, yes, 3 p.m.
And this will be a reveal, not only the images but the actual statue.
So
itself.
I do plan to have the prop there, the prop replica Rancor, and what ends up happening on those streams, the Wi-Fi, for whatever reason, Wi-Fi hates me, I guess, but I feel like the Facebook streams always wind up defaulting to this very low resolution, but we'll get in there and I'll be able to turn it and show it from a few sides, point out a few things that I think are cool about it. And, as you can tell, this stuff gets to me, I could clearly go on when it comes to talking about the stuff we're working on. And it's not in that I need to talk this up way. It's this somebody asked Tom a question and he's not going to shut up way, because I'm just obsessed with this stuff.
It's great.
And
it's great.
Hopefully somebody out there is benefiting from this obsession now that I can make and sell this stuff.
Well, and Tom, we've been sitting here mainly because everything you're saying is so interesting. So we've been trying to listen and stuff, but I do want you to know that we're all very excited. Cool. I don't know if we've shown that yet, but we're very.
We're busting at the seams, but we're trying to remain.
I'm excited.
Right. No, you're holding.
I've been excited for the Rancor for a while now, and knowing that it was coming out, and just being able to see images, and looking forward to pre-order all this stuff. It's really exciting. So I congratulations to you and your team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on the show, Tom.
Oh, my pleasure.
We loved it. Our viewers loved it. So thanks a ton,
cool.
And we hope to be able to have you again on the show in the future.
Yeah, sure. There's always something new to talk about in our shop, man.
Yeah, right.
All right, guys. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Well,
good night, guys.